In this video, I talk about fractions and how to divide them. And just one of the things that I want you to kind of keep in mind is this idea of opposites. Okay, and so I'm just going to kind of take you back for a bit so that you get a feel for opposites. And so consider the problem 3 minus a negative 3. And so if you've worked with integers before and negative numbers, then you know that you can rewrite this as 3 plus the opposite of negative 3. So if we say it like that, we say take the opposite of negative 3. Well, the opposite of negative 3 is a positive 3. So this is really 3 plus 3, or 6. Okay, division and multiplication have this same relationship. Division is nothing more than the inverse of multiplication. And so what we're really going to do is we're going to have something that looks like 3 plus 3, and we're going to kind of rewrite it as 3 minus a negative 3. We're going to do a double negative on purpose. You'll see why. Just before we do this, we need to understand that we want the opposite of a fraction, or its inverse, is just its flip. And we call this flip not only the inverse, which is the proper name, but also its reciprocal. And so we need to know how to take a reciprocal, or find the reciprocal of a fraction. To do that, just reverse the roles. And so 3 halves becomes 2/3. That's its reciprocal. That's its inverse. Okay, we'll multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to kind of, instead of dividing, the example I gave up here is 3 plus 3, and we're going to rewrite it. Instead of doing one operation, we're actually going to do 2. And that's going to make our job easier. Because remember, division is the inverse of multiplication. So we have to not multiply. Or not divide, I should say. Okay, so let's try this out. Here's how this works. The first number stays put. The sign, the division sign, changes to multiplication. And then you flip the second fraction. You take its reciprocal, or its inverse. So you are inverting the operation, and you are inverting the fraction, and so the effect is nothing. You are inverting the inverse, so you get back to where you belong. But this makes it easier because now we can go ahead and multiply. So if we multiply this, as 2 times 4 is 8, 5 times 3 is 15, and then we check to reduce. Okay, let's try another one. Now, in this next problem, we treat it the exact same way as we did with the one above. We're going to multiply by the inverse. But first, we have to recognize that 6 is the same as 6 divided by 1. And that's going to help us with our integers. And so we're going to rewrite 6 as 6 over 1, and then we're going to flip the operation to multiplication, and then we're going to flip the fraction to its reciprocal, or inverse. When you do that, now if you've seen previous videos on simplifying and multiplying at the same time, you can take this and do that simplifying right now. So before we multiply it, let's look for common factors, both top and bottom. You cannot do this with the division. You must write it in multiplication first. Please do that. Otherwise, it could get really ugly. And so 6 and 2 have common factors of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And so we have 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times 1 is 1. And any number divided by 1 is itself. Okay, so that's just division of fractions. Let's do one more quick. Don't forget, the idea here is to rewrite any of the integers into fraction form. And we're going to kind of add a step here, because I don't want to put too many steps in one. Just as in all the other divisions, we're going to keep the first one the same. It's already a fraction, so we don't have to rewrite it. Okay, now I'm going to keep the division here, and the reason is I need to rewrite negative 2 as a fraction. And so I'm going to rewrite negative 2 as negative 2 over 1. So now when I go back and do it, now I can go ahead and see I have a fraction, I have a division, so I have to invert and multiply. And so I take 5/6. I'm inverting my division to multiplication. I'm inverting my negative 2 over 1 into negative 1 over 2. The negative doesn't matter or doesn't care where it goes. It could be the 1, it could be the 2, it could be out front. They're all the same. It's whatever's most convenient for you. And so again, I'm checking for that common factor top and bottom. 5 doesn't have any factors that are in common with 6 and 2 other than 1, and that doesn't help us. 1 doesn't have any common factors with 6 and 2 other than 1, so that doesn't help us. So we just go ahead and multiply. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. 6 times 2 is 12. There's our answer. So whenever you're dividing fractions, first things first, make sure that if you have integers, that you rewrite them as fractions, then just rewrite the whole problem, division and all. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to change the division to multiplication. Then you're going to flip the second fraction. After that, you're going to multiply the two fractions just like you'd had before. And that's dividing fractions.